What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This is not just any other episode of the Danny DeBrito podcast, however. This is episode 50, okay? We've reached the big milestone. We've reached the big 5-0, which means namely that we are 2 episodes away from dropping an episode every single Monday for an entire year, focusing on topics around self-improvement, personal development, and helping you become the best version of yourself. So if you've listened to any episodes of the podcast, or maybe if you're a regular listener and you tune in every week, I just want to say shout out to you. Thank you so much for the support. If you've commented, liked, shared any of the posts, you subscribed on Spotify or YouTube or anything at all, just shot me a text and said, hey man, I like what you're doing, or told me that. I really appreciate it. It's not falling on deaf ears, and that is the kind of stuff that keeps me going. When I know that I'm touching people's lives in one way or another, whether it's through the content and the material in the podcast itself, or it's because of the simple fact that I'm just doing it consistently, whatever it might be, I really appreciate it. And we're just going to keep this train rolling. So the topic of today is how to leverage heartbreak or other hardships for your own personal development. I spoke about this on a couple episodes ago, talking about how I got my heart broken, and that's how I entered the world of personal development in the first place. And, a quick little story or synopsis of this scenario that happened to me was starting in 2018. I was just graduating from college. I was entering the workforce. I had an entry-level position, and there's a lot of things up in the air. I was moving between cities. I was coming back from a long vacation, and I was about to dive into my full-time job. And I just didn't really know much about myself. I didn't really know much about what I wanted to do long-term. And similarly, I didn't know what to look for in a partner. And so that was a hard lesson that I learned when there was somebody that I was highly invested in at the time. I was kind of on this, it was like a quick burn type of relationship, but still I was head over heels, fully in it, putting all of my eggs in this basket, expecting it to work out seamlessly with minimal effort, just expecting that was going to be the person that I was going to be with for my life. And when the rug was pulled out from under me and this person showed some of their true characters in terms of, their faithfulness or their integrity, it really served as a wake-up call for me in many, many ways. Not only with how I would treat relationships in the future or how I would analyze people or assess their character, but also with the motivation that it provided to me to understand myself and to work on becoming the best version of myself. And a lot of times when we encounter relationship struggles, hardships, or adversity in our lives, it can serve as the fuel for a higher version of self. You can use these adverse circumstances as ways to propel you to new heights that you never could have possibly imagined reaching before. And in essence, that's kind of what happened with this relationship that fell apart for me in right after college. Was I realized that there was a lot that I didn't know about myself, about the opposite gender, about how to handle myself in relationships, about where my life was going. There was a lot of unknowns. And prior to that, I had a structure in life. And I know a lot of people can relate to this. When you're going through high school, you have a structure. It's built for you. It's already set in place. 8 to 3, you're in class. Afterwards, you try and hang out with your buddies. You try and play a sport or do whatever to fill up your free time, because that's just what you're supposed to do. In college, you also have a structure. It's becoming a little bit more loose, but you still have a structure. You still got class. You still got college to ground you in many, many ways. But following that, it really just opens up. The entire world is all of a sudden open to you. You can do fucking anything you want. You could drop everything and go work at a hostel in Australia and serve beer, or you could jump into the corporate world, or you could work for nonprofits, or you could dedicate your time volunteering. The options are endless, right? And this also plays into your ability to pick a partner and see yourself in a relationship, because you also have this wide expanse of world opening up to you, and you don't really know how to prioritize a relationship within that. Should the relationship dictate where you go? Should you follow your career and your dreams first? And then if a relationship works in that same space, then it's meant to be. There's a lot of open questions and a lot of what ifs, I guess, in that scenario. And so when everything came crashing down for me, right, I thought I had this stability, this rock, which was my relationship at that time, when everything else was kind of fluid. When that got pulled out from under me, it forced me to look inwards, and it forced me to really have a moment of reckoning about who I was and what my trajectory should be in life. And I think a lot of times these moments can really be the straw that breaks the camel's back for a lot of people, and it can send you into a spiral. And luckily, for one reason or another, that didn't happen to me. And I chose to follow a different path, which was to try and level up and become a much better version of myself. But it's really a struggle. It's a mental struggle. It's a battle that you have to go through when you're faced with those circumstances. And my message today is when you're facing these adverse circumstances, when your partner decides that they want to split, or your partner does something illicit, or your job maybe, which was your rock, gets pulled out from under you. These are moments that your life can go one of two ways. You can choose to either use that experience as a lever to push you into new heights, or you can let that experience define the next 6 months, the next year of your life, and go into a little bit of a backslide. And these are the pivotal moments in life. Sometimes if you're on cruise control and everything is going not amazingly well, but like decently well, where you don't feel an urgent need to try something different or to pivot to something new, then that will just continue on for an infinite amount of time. And you might 5 or 10 years down the line, realize that you're unsatisfied. And so sometimes these moments that happen to us, heartbreak or loss of job, loss of a loved one, any adverse circumstance in our life, sometimes these things can actually be a blessing that 5 years later, when we look back on them, we realize that that was exactly what we needed. That was the exact thing that needed to happen at that moment in time. And for me, what this kickstarted was my journey into personal development. After that time, I realized that I needed to do a lot of soul searching. I needed to figure out not only who I am, but also how I'm going to interact with in all of my future relationships, how I'm going to prioritize certain things in my life, whether I'm going to prioritize relationships, whether I'm going to prioritize career. At that moment in time, it was like a fork in the road, and I chose to take the high road. I chose to use that experience as a way to level up my life in many, many ways. And we all have this choice. We all have these moments, these adverse circumstances that we can choose to allow to define us, or we can choose to use them as a vault, to pole vault into the next phase of our life, into a much higher, much more elevated phase of our life. And so that's my message for today, guys, is to think carefully about when those things happen to you. Think how much it's actually an opportunity. Think about how important this moment is and how it actually could have been exactly what you were looking for.